criminal part of abusing Islamic faith to justify criminal behavior, you know? So for us as people who identify with Muslim faith, we not only speak out against, you know, hijacking our faith, but also we sacrifice our lives to root it out, because this is obviously evil. When we're talking about the root cause is not the ideology only, but upholding and honoring that ideology. The thing that makes an Israeli soldier feel proud for murdering Faris Oda, feel proud for murdering Imran al-Hamas, and finishing his magazine in her body. Like I'm talking about the 13-year-old girl, where Israeli soldiers shot her down, and then the commander went on her body and just finished his magazine in her. The reason this soldier was paid something like 100,000 shekels or whatever in compensation, you know, because this man was doing his duty, you know. The reason is the implementation of that, you know, racist ideology. Now, we have racist people all over the world, you know, but they don't feel protected. In the state of Israel, racists are protected because they are the founders of the state, they are the soldiers of the state, and they are, you know, the people who honor the ideology of this criminal state. There are a few things that were mentioned that I would like to also, you know, comment on. We live in a kind of like place where there is a very sick social norm going on around, which is blaming the victim. What's happening to, why would the mother of Faris Oda allow him to go and throw rocks? Why would a Palestinian allow another Palestinian to reject Israeli oppression with the use of a stone, or a bullet, or a rocket, or a car, or whatever we actually do in expressing our rejection to the Israeli oppression? It's just another form of blaming the victim, you know? You have to ignore the fact that Palestinian people are victims of the savagery of the state of Israel. If you ignore the fact that we are victims, then you start blaming us, you know? Oppression, as long as oppression exists, it must be resisted by any means necessary. By any means necessary. We have to keep reminding ourselves, like, our means might not please all of you, but those are the means that we see fit with the oppression that's imposed upon us. You don't have to agree with us. You don't have to agree with us when we resist Israeli oppression. You don't have to agree with our methods. But as a person who believes in liberty, who believes in the fact that everyone is born free and equal, you know, what we're fighting for is what you guys take for granted, which is freedom and equality. As long as Palestinian people are denied the right to freedom and equality, they will continue to resist oppression by any means necessary. And of course, once again, you don't have to agree with our methods, you know, but agree with the methods that are compatible with your moral standards. And if there are things that are not compatible with your moral standards, it's okay, don't support them, you know. But please, do always remember that the language of blaming the victim is so normalized, and it should be challenged within politics, within economy, within social life, and so on. When we're talking about blaming the victim, in our context, it gets actually worse than that. The first female prime minister of the state of Israel said something very sick, and it's still like, you know, it helps you understand the attitude that we have to deal with on a daily basis. She said that she might forgive the Arabs for killing Jewish children, but she will never forgive them for making us kill their children. Like every time a Palestinian is murdered by an Israeli soldier, the victim is the Israeli soldier who is made to murder a Palestinian. Every time an Israeli pilot launches a rocket to make a family disappear in Gaza or murder 5 people in Jericho like the other day, the victim is not the Palestinian who's murdered. The victim is the poor soldier who is made by the Palestinian to murder that Palestinian. So in our case, it's actually beyond the regular and normal sickness. I think I don't blame people for not understanding it because it's something beyond, actually beyond evil. And the last thing I want to point out is like you don't have to have all the people marching with you, brother. You know, Ali bin Abi Talib said something very profound. He said, "Do not fear the way of righteousness for the few who walk it." So you identify the way of righteousness, you identify the way of justice. Keep walking it even if all the people refuse to walk it. You know, yes, it's beautiful to have more people involved in the quest for justice for Palestine. But the presence of people, you know, is irrelevant to your quest. You know, do not try to convince people that justice is justice. Because the moment you fall into the trap of convincing, it's over. Like, justice is an absolute value. You either support it or you don't. And you don't need justifications for walking the way for justice. You don't need justifications for that. But you need justifications for failing the victims. You need justifications for failing the oppressed. You need justifications for failing Palestinians who have to endure this injustice every single day of their life. You know, you don't need to justify yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Baha. I do believe Palestine was not lost in a debate. We did not have a Zionist team and a Palestinian team who debated, and then the Zionist team won, then they took over Palestine. They took up arms, they had superpowers playing in their favor. They took over the Palestinian land, they forced out hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and eventually the state of Israel was created, and the state eventually has become like a Frankenstein, in my perspective. It's eating up everybody, not just the Palestinians, but even its own people. Miko, I would like to listen to your perspectives about the root cause of the problem in Palestine. You mentioned you grew up learning about the situation in one way, then eventually you unlearned this and you started to look at it from other perspectives. You brought in probably the ethical angle and other angles. What do you think, after all these years of experience, is the real root cause of the problem in Palestine?
Thank you. Before I answer that, I want to touch on something Dr. Nazari was saying about apartheid and genocide. They're not mutually exclusive. The state of Israel is actually engaged in 3 crimes against humanity all at the same time. Those 3 crimes are genocide, ethnic cleansing, and an apartheid regime. And those 3 crimes against humanity began only a few short years, maybe 3 years after the end of the Holocaust. Think about this. The term crime against humanity was coined, was created, the idea of a crime against humanity was established and recognized after World War II, after the genocide of the Jews in Europe. And 3 years after that, a state that is calling itself the state of the Jews is committing 3 crimes against humanity, because it began immediately: genocide, and ethnic cleansing, and establishing an apartheid regime. So I just wanted to put that out there. Now, in terms of the root cause, I have a good friend in New York. He's a rabbi. He's an ultra-Orthodox rabbi, and he's a strong anti-Zionist. And his name is Rabbi Yaakov Shapiro, and he has a wonderful podcast. It's called Committing High Reason. committing high reason. And in one of the latest episodes, he talks about the fascist roots of Zionism. And he definitely shows very, very clearly, the strong ties between Zionism and fascism, and how one ideology was, created the other one, helped to create the other one. So, I mean, we're talking about, generally, we're talking about white supremacy. We're talking about this idea that somehow Europeans are superior, and, the term land without a people for a people without a land. This actually was coined by Christian Zionists before the Jewish Zionists even began. And it's not that they didn't know that there were people on the land. It's just that they thought these people don't matter. They're expendable. That's why it's okay to kick them out. That's why it's okay to kill them. And generation after generation, this horribly racist ideology called Zionism was passed on from generation to generation. I was brought up on that as well, except I didn't. When you're learning it, you don't think it's racist because they justify it. There's always a justification because the other side is dangerous, because we are in danger, because we didn't have a choice. Maybe we did some terrible things, but we didn't have a choice because this is our fate. As Jewish people, our fate is to live in Palestine, and because the Palestinians don't want us, we have to kill them. So everything is justified. So it's a very, it's a very successful education system that generation after generation educates people that it's okay to kill other people and take their homes and take their land. To the point where what we see today is so horrific that it's gone to a place where I don't think anybody ever expected, where it's even the discourse and everything. These crimes are done completely in the open. You can see them on social media, you can see them everywhere, and there's no problem with that. Nobody's taken to court, nobody is made to pay for this. And it's so blatant that it almost seems like it's justified. The discourse among Israelis is so racist, blatantly, openly racist. I'll give you an example. This whole idea that Jews need to be allowed to go to the Al-Aqsa compound, to the Temple Mount, what they call the Temple Mount. The way they describe it now, well, let me backtrack. First of all, according to Jewish law, the Jewish religious law, Jewish people are prohibited from entering the space of Al-Aqsa because it's hallowed ground, because it's a holy space. And so Jews are prohibited from entering, according to Jewish law. Not Israeli law, not any other law, Jewish law that goes back centuries. Okay? Now these settlers that go on and want to build their own temple there claim to be religious Jews, but they violate one of the pillars of Jewish law, which is that Jews are prohibited. Even when I was growing up, I didn't grow up religious, I knew that was the law. That was Jewish law. Now, until recently, it seemed like a madness, a complete madness, to talk about building a space, a temple for Jews and so on the Al-Aqsa compound. Today, Ben-Gvir was, the strongest man in really Israeli politics today, and the most popular. He is, you see him on all the newscasts, all the Israeli news shows, every news channel has him. And they love him. They absolutely love him. And so in a recent interview, when he just became the Minister of what they call the National Security, they asked him, "We haven't seen you go to the Temple Mount recently. How come you haven't been coming to the Temple Mount? You said you will come every week. You said you will come every Friday. How come you're not coming?" In other words, what used to be considered madness, absolute utter madness, to go and to provoke, because they don't go there because they want to pray, they go there because they want to provoke. It's a provocation, it's a penetration. It's not a modest, humble desire to pray. It's a violent penetration of a holy ground, of a holy space. And he said, oh yes, yes, I will go soon, I will go soon. Many Jews are going, and he's right. You know, in the last few years, I don't know, 80,000, 90,000 Israelis have been going on these tours with the settlers onto the Al-Aqsa compound. But what used to be considered an absolute madness, even to discuss it, and used to be considered fringe politics, is now discussed openly as mainstream. And the man who should be, you know, in jail because he himself was tried and convicted of belonging to a terrorist organization in Israel by an Israeli court. He is now the man in charge of all security, which means the all lives of Palestinians, the police and all the other agencies. And he is now mainstream. And he is now beloved. So it went from, it's not that Israeli society or somehow the Israeli politics have become more right-wing. It started with its fascist roots 100 or so years ago, more than 100 years ago, and today this is the natural progression. That's why, I'll just say this one last thing, that's why when people talk about some kind of a liberal Zionism, or a peaceful Israel, or a peaceful, you know, Israeli politicians that are kind of more liberal, these are impossible, these are opposites. You cannot be a liberal Zionist. You're either a fascist or you can't be both. You know, you can't be an Israeli and support Israel and talk about peace. It's absurd. These are two conflicting ideas. The state of Israel and peace in Palestine are two completely conflicting ideas. So that's where we are today. So it started with that, and then here we are today as a kind of a natural progression of where that was. But the roots go back, way back, and the discourse then among those leaders of the Zionists not only talked like Baha was saying about Palestinians, they were talking that way about the religious Jews, because the religious Jews opposed Zionism. So if you read what the early leaders of Zionism said about the Jews, the religious Jews, you will faint with shock how racist it was against Jews. So this is the roots of Zionism. It's racism, it's supremacy, and it's fascism.
Thank you, Miko. I think also the European colonial powers are equally to be blamed for the situation in Palestine. They did unkind things to the Jewish people in Europe. You know, Russian pogroms, and then driving them out, massacres, Holocaust, etc. But we have to pay the price. We pay the bill. The Palestinian people, the European powers, up until today have not paid the price of those crimes.
If I can just say one word about that, excuse me. There is this impression, wrong impression, that Israelis are victims of the Holocaust or victims of pogroms. You know, very, very few Holocaust survivors went to Israel. A very small percentage, the vast majority. Yeah, a little bit more, but yeah, very, very small percentage. The vast majority of Holocaust survivors did not go to Israel, to became Israel. So Israelis are not the children of Holocaust survivors, except for very few. And I think it's really, really important. Israelis are not, have never been persecuted by anybody. And I think it's really, really important because the Holocaust survivors, even the ones that did go, many of them left. Because why go from one racist, violent place to another? And so many of them left, either went back home or came to America and that sort of thing.
But so they used it very well. They used the story very well. Of course, I mean, in the West, the feeling of guilt persists until today. They still feel that what happened was bad and we have to fix it by doing something else, which is also equally bad. Yeah, they're doing it to the Palestinians and it never ends. But why not take the blame? Those European powers have to take the blame and fix it. Okay, let's listen to other perspectives on this matter. Maybe Prof. Nazari can weigh in. What do you think is the root cause of the struggle in Palestine?
Briefly, have you another round after this? Okay, yeah. I think I look at the more broader picture of of oppression of one group of person to another group of person. This happens throughout the history of mankind. You have oppression. So this is another form of oppression of the group of people who was another. And the most violent ones happens in Palestine, committed by some zealots, Zionists. But why is it perpetuating for decades until now? It's because that is another group of people who don't want to be in the forefront. They stay at the back, but they perpetuate it. They are the people who are very influential, financially, politically, and financially very powerful. Some are not even politicians, they are financiers. They are at the back and they are financing this. They are the ones who are financing this, and that's the reason why even in actually in America now, the sympathy towards Palestinians is actually increasing. I don't know whether you are familiar with the name Peter Baha. He is a writer. Now he's talking about settler colonialism, etc. Another guy, Zionist, Thomas Friedman, the writer, New York Times columnist, Zionist. He openly now says that things over there now are too much. He's against the, in other ways, he's actually not abandoning Zionism, but completely different from his stance before, talking about Palestinian rights, etc. So things are, but and especially among supporters of the Democratic Party, the sentiment, because of the third generation Palestinians are very active over there now. They are influencing the discourse over there. Compared to when I was in the States in 1985, I was a student at the State University of New York in Buffalo. A student, you know, I was upset about something in Palestine, so I scribbled something on the table in the library. Scribbled, right? The problem is that America is unjust to the Palestinians. I wrote there, and then I came back and I saw a response to that very second year, and then not go to the library anymore because I thought I was going to be killed by people. You cannot talk about Palestine in America at the time. There's a very famous book called Those Who Dare to Speak. I don't know whether you've heard of that one. That's written by American politicians. Anybody who dared to speak the truth about Palestine in the US will not survive politically. But you see now, Rashid, there are many congressmen who now can talk about Palestine. They don't lose their position. Meaning things are really changing. But why? Because they don't have the financial clout. So the financial clout is held by another group. They are the ones who are very influential in America and also the world. And that's the reason why you have what's happening over there in Palestine and perpetuating, because there is a class of oppressors who are oppressing the oppressed. And that is the root cause of it. I will elaborate later on what we can do about it.
Thank you very much, Professor. I want you, Rana, to come into this discussion and tell us about your perspective on the root cause of the problem in Palestine. Then we will move next, inshallah, to listen about perspectives or analysis about the solution and the way out, and what can we do here in Malaysia to achieve that. But share first about your views of the root cause of the problem.
Well, I think my colleagues have said enough about this topic. As a Palestinian who has grown up in Gaza, part of my childhood, and then traveled and came back and witnessed, different events in my city, I guess, Gaza, because I have never really been to other parts of Palestine, maybe except once in my life. I grew up as a child seeing soldiers in the street, and I had this, I guess I just always grew up, fearing these soldiers. I didn't know why they were there, I was too young, but then I grew up and I traveled to the States and came back and they were still there. The first Intifada broke out, and the second I witnessed with my family and my children. And with every every new attack on the Palestinian people over the Gaza Strip, it became more ferocious. I mean, like, if I wanted to compare the first Intifada to the second, I remember in the first Intifada we used to walk, women used to walk down the street and soldiers would not even look at them. They would not even, talk to them. They would just even, move aside and let them pass. But fast forward to, the second Intifada, they just get shot at point blank range. After that, the second Intifada and then all these attacks we witnessed. It always made me think, just as a teenager, as a child, a teenager, as a mother, why is this happening to us? Why is this not stopping? There's only one explanation, I guess. I'll just repeat what my colleagues have said. It's the oppression, it's the racism and the fascist ideologies of these oppressors. That they want to dehumanize us. They want to just kill our will. And I think this applies to us in Gaza especially because by caging us into this tiny piece of land, they think that they can kill the will of the people. And I can't, we're all human after all. My people, some of them, if you come to Gaza, you will see that the youth are despondent, they don't have much hope in living in Gaza. That's why many of them try to, just leave. But there is also something powerful in my people that after every attack, every murderous cycle, they come out stronger. And I think that this is something that has made me stronger, just looking at my people and how they respond to these attacks by the Israelis. So it's my only explanation is, other than what my colleagues said, it's the Zionist ideology of just oppressing people and killing them so they can, just suffocate the life out of them.
What do you think is the way out? What should we do?
The way out of what?
This occupation, this oppression. What should we do?
Yeah.
Palestinians are building up their resistance. This year alone, we are in February, 50 Palestinians have been killed by the authorities. Some of them were actually resistance fighters trying to find a way out. In Gaza, the Palestinian resistance has been building capabilities. In fact, Gaza is a good example that resistance yields in freedom. They resisted throughout, especially the second Intifada, and eventually in 2005, the military and the Israeli government felt that that's it, let's just give up this piece of land and live in peace. But of course, it was a miscalculation. But the Palestinians liberated Gaza. What do you think should be done to liberate the rest of Palestine, to end occupation?
I believe in the power of resistance, and I think that I know that resistance is a legitimate right for all oppressed people, and this is by international laws and conventions. And I'm not ashamed to say this, even, in front of anyone, even if these, I know that in Western media we're portrayed as terrorists because, like you said, a child throws rocks or a slingshot at an Israeli sniper, and then he gets shot in the knee and gets his legs amputated. So, imagine if someone barges into your home. What would you do? Would you just sit there and do nothing? You would, a normal human being would resist, would try to kick this thief out of his house, or this soldier or whatever. So this is normal behavior. A normal human being who lives in dignity and honor would just protect his land. True that we are besieged on this piece of land, but we still have the power, an internal power. We have, the people of Gaza are very powerful and steadfast people. They believe that they have a noble cause. We have tried the peace process for over 20 years and we have gained nothing. It has even actually, at the height of the peace process, where it was like just at the beginning of the new millennium, the most, vicious attacks happened over Gaza and in the West Bank. I remember the massacre of Jenin, and how the Sharon would